Hello and welcome to all of you from very literally all over the world. I saw from Zagreb, the Philippines, Brazil. This is absolutely extraordinary today. I'm Lizzie and I'm the director of Jane Austen's house. And it is an absolute joy and a privilege to be able to be with you this evening, and especially during these very, very, very strange times. We have some astonishing guests who are absolutely wonderful and who we are so delighted to have with us today. We've got Paula in her fabulous hat. Where are you?
We could describe Jane Austen as a glass of cold but toasty golden champagne on a bright summer's evening, a cosy duvet for chilly days, a trusted sibling who always knows the right words to say to make us howl with laughter when we feel low, but that doesn't begin to scrape the surface. In the end, I can only speak for myself when I say that Jane Austen feels like the most beloved of companions, the sun of our lives, the gilder of every pleasure, the soother of every sorrow. And Mansfield Park brings me to my final thoughts on this special and glorious day of Jane Austen's 245th birthday celebrations. There is perhaps nothing so precious in the world than love and friendship, than the gift of laughter and the joy of reading. So let other pens dwell on guilt and misery. I quit such odious subjects as soon as I can, impatient to restore everyone not greatly in fault themselves to tolerable comfort, and to have done with all the rest.
Paula, thank you so much. That was absolutely gorgeous. I think you just really capture why Jane Austen means so much to so many people. It is, it's that wit, it's that compassion, but also that little bit of sark. Now, my next speaker is someone who I've also had a great privilege of speaking with earlier last month, Julienne Guerrero, in our Austen Wednesdays, where we had the most fabulous chat. We're delighted to have you back again with us tonight, Julia, and to talk to us a little bit more about these things and about Christmas and food and festivities.
Imagine the table set with all these dishes, in addition some puddings, some molded jellies. And now I would like to mention just a couple of foods that are perhaps in the background of these larger, more prominent items, very much as Martha was in the background of Jane's eminent light. First, I give you this simple biscuit. Secondly, I would love to pay some simple attention to the orange. One final example for the orange would be Jane's beloved orange wine. Now, in the months before her death, Jane Austen rallied and she wrote to her friend Aletha Bigg at Manydown and asked her for an excellent recipe for some orange wine, one made with Seville oranges. And it's interesting to talk about orange wine in this particular time period because the Seville oranges are just coming in from Spain. From December to about February, they were prominent in the markets as they are today. It's a thick, nubby-skinned orange, and it's very much on the tart side. And it would have been balanced with these sweet oranges, which they would have called China oranges. Now, sadly, we don't have the recipe from Aletha Bigg from Manydown. But Martha does have two other recipes for orange wine in her household book. So I'd like to raise a glass of orange wine to Jane and say cheers. Happy birthday, Jane.
Thank you so much, Julienne. And that's such a joy. I want orange wine now. That sounds delicious. And if that has made you hungry and you want to, which I'm sure it's made all of us hungry, I now want to pig out on Stilton and biscuits, but that is going to have to wait a few weeks until Christmas. But if you'd like to have a go at doing some baking of your own, we have our rather fabulous gingerbread challenge going on the website at the moment, which is to make your own gingerbread. But we've had some fabulous entries for our gingerbread channel. We've had Darcy going into the lake, Darcy coming out of the lake, and an entire recreation of Chawton Cottage and gingerbread, which is absolutely extraordinary. It is brilliant. I'm so pleased to be able to introduce Georgina White to join us. And she is going to join us this evening to start by singing Happy Birthday to Jane Austen.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jane. Happy birthday to you.
That was absolutely gorgeous. And that gives me a very brilliant way to segue into our next speaker, which is our very own and very talented Sophie Reynolds.
Hello, everyone. I am so lucky to be getting to do the Pride and Prejudice reading. This is one of my favourite scenes in Pride and Prejudice. It's the Netherfield Ball. So it's in chapter 18. And we're going to dive straight in. Lizzie Bennet has just found out that Mr. Wickham isn't at the ball, and she's feeling very disappointed and upset. However, but Elizabeth was not formed for ill humour, and though every prospect of her own was destroyed for the evening, it could not dwell long on her spirits, and having told all her griefs to Charlotte Lucas, whom she had not seen for a week, she was soon able to make a voluntary transition to the oddities of her cousin, and to point him out to her particular notice. The first 2 dances, however, brought a return of distress. They were dances of mortification. Mr. Collins, awkward and solemn, apologising instead of attending, and often moving wrong without being aware of it, gave her all the shame and misery which a disagreeable partner for a couple of dances can give. The moment of her release from him was ecstasy. She danced the next with an officer, and had the refreshment of talking of Wickham, and of hearing that he was universally liked. And when those dances were over, she returned to Charlotte Lucas, and was in conversation with her, when she found herself suddenly addressed by Mr. Darcy, who took her so much by surprise in his application for her hand, that, without knowing what she did, she accepted him.
Sophie, you're absolutely magic. Thank you so much. That was gorgeous. You've taken us right to Netherfield. I think it's in November, isn't it? It's the end of November. And it takes us in, because we know that Lizzie Bennet dressed with particular care for that ball. And it links us in very, very nicely to talking to Hilary Davidson. Absolutely fabulous to have you here with us today to talk more about clothes, which is just fab.
Thank you so much, Lizzie, and welcome everyone. And it's so fantastic to be able to share this with you. So I'm going to just give you a really quick talk about what you might wear in winter in the Regency, because I've had a lot of questions about this. And I think one of the things when we see all the adaptations that we love, they're generally filmed in summer. And I think this really skews about our ideas of what people wore. And Britain is often quite damp, you know, just a little bit. So this is like a really quick run through of what you do when it's not sunny and it's not so great for your muslins. So first of all, and this is one of my favorite things, they wore a lot of wool flannel underwear, just like in Sense and Sensibility, where Marianne Dashwood thinks that Colonel Brandon is terribly old and fuddy-duddy at 35 because he wears a flannel waistcoat. And once we sort of move up a bit, there's all these little kind of tips and tricks that Regency dresses could use to keep warm. So they could have flannel clothing that looked like it was a real waistcoat. You popped it underneath your normal waistcoat and it kind of gave you an extra layer. You could have lovely gowns made out of wool and stuff. When Jane and Cassandra have stuff gowns, it's actually made out of a woolen fabric. And even people at the time, there's a couple of staymakers who said that actually the primary reason to wear corsets and stays was to keep the body warm, which isn't something we think about so much anymore. But once you've got, you know, your gown on, then there's a whole lot of outer clothing that you could put on top of that. And one of my favorite quotes from the period is actually from Jane Austen's the fellow author Maria Edgeworth, who talks about what she was wearing in an open carriage in November, and all of these layers piled up upon her so that in the end she is as warm as a dormouse. And she's talking about these kind of tippets and fur stoles and capes and pelisses and shawls and fur-lined garments and muffs and gloves and redingotes that would keep you warm and, you know, preferably dry in all sorts of weather.
Well, it's actually, again, it's a chance to us to see everyone on their finery. So anybody who wants to take part in
Put on my quick
your
turban.
turban,
Yeah,
fabulous.
I'm gonna make myself a judging turban. It's a bit like the sorting hat, only more Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
It's fantastic. It is. There should be more turbans in the world. They're amazing. I'm sad they've gone out of fashion. They're just brilliant. So if we put everybody onto gallery view, and we are then going to do a bonnet judging competition. It is time. So we had a very special visitors today from the Sanditon Sisterhood who presented me with a very large check, which was very, very lovely to see, which was a donation towards our roof appeal. And it's absolutely wonderful to have you with us tonight.
It was actually a global effort, and it was really very generous of fans, especially as we've got locked down and everything else.
Thank you so much. It is just so appreciated. And also I'm going to take the chance now to say thank you as well to everybody who donated to our survival appeal back in June. It was astonishing. I use this one, and Paula as well. Huge thank you to you, Paula, and for really getting that going. And now we're going to go on to our very much bit of fun, which is our quiz.
So fingers on keyboards. And the first question is, how much money did Jane Austen earn for the publication of her novel, which at the time was called Susan? And when, oh yes, well done, whoever that was, somebody, you're all getting it. It was £10. Okay, and we're moving on to the foodie ones, which are my favourite. So which unusual ingredient is included in Martha Lloyd's mince pie recipe, which isn't normally stuck in there? Cheese, no. Oranges, no. Potato, no. Come on. No, not even meat, not brandy, not eggs. Caraway seeds, no. Bit, no. But these are all amazing answers. Lemon. Who said that? Mary Cole, winner of that point. Awesome. It was a whole lemon goes into Martha's mince pies. And last question, and we're going to leave it on, we're going to go back to my favourite. What was Jane Austen's first name? What was her working title for Pride and Prejudice? Who knows this one? First Impressions, yes, Eva Knightley. It was indeed First Impressions, and then it was changed to Pride and Prejudice later. I'm afraid we don't have a winner because you're all massively too quick for anyone to keep track of who got all those, but you were all pretty brilliant because the chat is just going crazy. Yeah, you're all really fast, so fantastic. You all win.
Sophie, you are very strict with those answers. You're very good. You're very impressive, but very, very strict. To celebrate Christmas, I'd like to welcome Georgina back to give us a beautiful rendition of Jane Austen's Deck the Halls, which actually appears in one of her music books.
Deck the halls with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la. 'Tis the season to be jolly, fa la 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 la. Don we now our gay apparel, fa la 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 la. Troll the ancient Yuletide carol, fa la la la. See the blazing Yule before us, fa la 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 la. Strike the harp and join the chorus, fa la la. Follow me in merry measure, fa la la. While I tell of Yuletide treasure, fa la. Forced away the old year passes, fa la. Hail the new year, lads and lasses, fa la. Sing we now in joy together, fa la. Heedless of the wind and weather, fa la. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Oh, Georgina, thank you so much. What an absolute joy to hear that and sing along. And it is such an ancient carol. It's really beautiful. And we have an example of that written out in Jane Austen's hand in our music book collection. So it's lovely to hear it. And it links on with, we're nearly finished, and I'm going to, with a reading from Emma, which at their Coles Christmas party, when there is every chance that they might have sung Deck the Halls. Emma had as much reason to be satisfied with the rest of the party as with Mr. Knightley. She had received with a cordial respect which she could not but please, and given all the consequence which she could wish for. When the Restons arrived, the kindest looks of love, the strongest of admiration were for her, and from both husband and wife, the son approached her with a cheerful eagerness which marked her his peculiar object. And at dinner she found him seated by her, and as she firmly believed, not without some dexterity on his side. The party was rather large, as it included one other family, a proper, unobjectable country family, whom the Coles had the advantage of naming among their acquaintance, and the male part of Mr. Cox's family, the lawyer of Highbury. The less worthy females were to come in the evening, with Miss Bates, Miss Fairfax, and Miss Smith, but already at dinner they were too numerous for any subject of conversation to be general, and while politics and Mr. Elton were talked over, Emma could fairly surrender her attention to the pleasantness of her neighbour. And it has been wonderful tonight to be able to surrender our attention to the pleasantness of our neighbours here today, to be sharing this event with you. It has been an absolute pleasure to share Jane Austen's birthday with you, and to look forward to Christmas. And I really do think, again, what would Jane have thought? What would Jane have thought of us here? And I think it's a real mark of her genius and her talent that has just transcended already 200 years, that those novels are being talked about and discussed and loved, that you're naming yourselves after these Austen characters, which is just amazing. And I think she couldn't have possibly imagined it. And I think it's one of those things that makes working and sharing Jane Austen's life so inspiring, that we know that this little baby that was born on a freezing cold night with the anticipation that she might grow up and get married and have more children, which is wonderful, and it was a real achievement to give up and see your children get married in their turn in Jane Austen's day, as so many women lost their lives. But instead, she created these incredible children that we still love and read today, her own darling children. And thank you for sharing this astonishing evening with us.
Merry
Bye.
Christmas.
Happy birthday.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Christmas.
Birthday, Jane.
Thank you.
Christmas.
Happy Jane Austen. I love Jane Austen.
Christmas. Bless us, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy Christmas. Join us, everyone.
Bye now.
We have
Amazing. I mean, that was fabulous.